Hello everyone, welcome to Coding Stunts, your favorite coding channel. In this Python programming series, we have reached towards the third video. In the previous video, I talked about the introduction to the language translators, and I also talked about that there are differences between the compiler and interpreter. So, what are the various aspects and the characteristics on which the compiler and interpreter are actually different from each other, and which one is better? This question I gave you in the previous video. You can say that which one is better, the compiler or interpreter. So today we are going to discuss about it and we will resolve it. Stay tuned till the end. Let's move further. So differences between compiler and interpreter are many, and the answer I am giving you previously, compiler is better than interpreter. I asked that which one is better. So simply the compiler is better than interpreter, and why the compiler is better than interpreter you will understand today only in this video. So stay tuned. The basic difference between the compiler and interpreter is that the compiler converts the whole code at once, whereas the interpreter converts the code line by line. This in detail I have discussed in the previous video. In case you have not watched that particular video, please watch it and come back to this one. So there are some characteristics on which we can compare the compiler and interpreter. Number one is the mode of execution. So when we talk about the compiler, it converts the entire program code into the machine code before execution. In the case of the interpreter, it translates and executes the program line by line without creating an intermediary machine code. So line by line translation goes there. Then when we talk about the execution speed, so compiler is generally faster, as I told you. So as the program is already compiled into machine code, it is faster. When we talk about interpreter, it lowers the speed in comparison because it translates and executes code line by line. So when the time and space complexities are calculated, you must have heard these terms, the time complexity, the space complexity. When these are calculated, then it is understood that, okay, the compiler is actually better than the interpreter. It is faster than the interpreter. When we talk about the memory usage, so usually compiler requires more memory since the entire program is loaded into memory. When we talk about interpreter, it typically consumes less memory as it processes code line by line. When we talk about the error detection, so in the case of compiler, all syntax errors are checked at once before execution begins. Whereas in the case of the interpreter, syntax errors are detected once, like at a time, as each line is executed, because in the case of the interpreter, the execution goes line by line. When we talk about the characteristics of compiler interpreter, and the portability comes into the picture. So now it comes that which one is more portable and what is the differences. So compiler, when we talk about compiler, so the compiled code may not be directly portable to different platforms, often requiring recompilation. Because you must be, know this, like in the case of C and C++ programming languages, it is quite popular that they are not highly platform independent. The C and the C++ programming languages, C and C++ both are using compiler. They are compiler based programming languages and they are not highly platform independent. When you are writing your code on some particular machine, maybe you are writing your code on Windows 10 and 64-bit operating system, it's not compulsory that it will run directly on the Linux. So there is some requirement before we have to install some compiler and all, then the things goes well. And it's not even compulsory after that also the things goes well. But in the case of interpreter, the source code is portable, as the interpreter can be installed on different platforms. So it is highly portable. Interpreter codes are portable, whereas compiler codes are not portable. When we talk about the compiler, so C, C++ programming languages are an example, and interpreter like JavaScript, PHP, they are like totally dependent on interpreter. They are interpreter based languages. Whereas when we talk about Python, which is our main concern, there is compiler and interpreter both working. Just like the Java, in the case of like you can say Python programming, the compiler and interpreter both are there. When we talk about debugging, so debugging can be more challenging as you may need to recompile the code after making changes in the case of compiler. Whereas an interpreter, easier to debug since you can identify and fix issues as you go without recompilation. Then the compilation process, when we talk about, so in the case of compiler, firstly the scanning goes, so it is like lexical analysis, then the parsing, that is the syntax analysis, then Third step you can say is semantic analysis. Then fourth is intermediate code generation, then optimization, then code generation once again, then linking if necessary according to the programming language. In the case of interpreter, first of all, lexical analysis will be going, then parsing, that is syntax error, syntax analysis, and then the interpretation takes place. Then examples, if we talk about, so C, C++, Java, and Fortran are compiled languages. Okay, Java is having JIT compiler also present inside it in the garbage collector. I'm sorry, not in the garbage collector, actually. In the JVM, the Java virtual machine is having the JIT compiler. So Java is having the compiler also, as I told you. And when we talk about interpreted, so Ruby, JavaScript, PHP, Python are called highly interpreted languages. The popular languages like C, C++, Java, and Rust are examples of compiled languages. Although the Java programming, when we talk about, there is also the compiler and interpreter both. But most of the time it's considered to be the compiled language because there are two compilers. One is Java C compiler, one is JIT compiler. So I'm not talking in depth here for like the details of Java, but still it is in the category of compiled languages. When we talk about interpreter, so Python, Ruby, JavaScript, and PHP are examples of interpreted languages. So these are the characteristics and the comparison between the compiler and interpreter. I hope you have enjoyed this and you have learned something new today in this video when we talked about the compiler and interpreter comparisons and which one is the better one. Now I hope you have understood it. The next topic which I am going to start, that is going to be what is Python. Now we will be talking about Python. We will be directly jumping into the Python programming, but from the next video. So if you are new to this channel, do not forget to subscribe and press the notification bell for the latest uploads of my channel. See you in the next video. Take care.